Hello, I'm Pamela McCorkle, and this is People Express Part 2. In examining the slides and information for People Express, I determined that while growth is wonderful, everyone wants that. It's great in increments. A business that grows too quickly without the means or strategy to support that growth, or an understanding of what their costs are, is likely to not succeed. Acquiring other airlines was a mistake on Don Burr's part. First, Frontier and People Express's strategies did not align. Frontier was a major competitor in the game even then, and PEX would have had to align their strategy to cover running Frontier in the way that it had been being run to remain competitive. People Express might have been an innovator in bringing the ability to travel to many people for good prices, but that is what they were, a discount airline. They weren't on the same level as Frontier, United, or Continental, so when they acquired Frontier, they had to raise rates to compete, and thus the first crack in their business plan was formed. If I were to take over People Express from the moment they started to decline, I would start by asking, why has performance followed the path that it has? Well, the answer to that is because growth occurred too quickly. Where will future performance go if we carry on as we are? Straight into liquidation. How can we improve future performance, right? How can we salvage this mess? Let's perform a SWOT analysis. To do this, we identify PEX's strengths, which were that they were the low-cost leader, essentially. They provided a means for people who wouldn't have normally been able to fly. My recommendation would have been going back to what works. Low-cost fares, no frills. Take it back to the essentials. The people enjoyed that, and that is why the company flourished. What are their weaknesses? The fact that they acquired other airlines and debt, and in the process of acquiring those airlines must now compete at an upper tier level, which they were not prepared for. In order to go back to what works, cutting the excess of a higher maintenance airline would be paramount. Brit Airways was essentially looking for collaboration, so keeping them, a smaller airline, might have been safe, but Frontier would definitely have to go. You're here for cheap flights, and that's what you're getting. I would put reevaluating any first-class flight services and the costs associated with that once the business leveled out and maintained stability for some time. What threats are looming? The threat of shutting down is probably the biggest threat. So how do we combat that? What opportunities are available? We'll look at those shortly. In my simulation, I found that it did not matter what happened with the aircraft. I added aircraft, and I went bankrupt by year 2, or liquidated by year 2. I removed aircraft, and I liquidated by year 1. Adding additional marketing, slightly elevating target pricing, and adding minimal staff ultimately let me finish the game. Another thing I found interesting was that it did not matter if I lowered or raised fares, customer satisfaction still leveled off after a few years to a 4. This leads me to believe that there are other factors that would contribute to success that are not measured in simulation but can be shown on a scorecard. Now, moving on to the scorecard. I deduced that instead of having flight staff clean and fuel airplanes, etc., outsourcing this to another company at a low cost would be beneficial and cost efficient. From my understanding, they started out doing this and then decided this duty would fall on People Express staff instead. Outsourcing would ensure quicker turnaround times for flights, improving another section of the scorecard, customers. Then there would not be a need to hire and train more staff. And employee morale would improve, as employees would not be saddled with additional duties that were not previously part of the package. Which lends another point on the internal business process portion of the scorecard. All these things are going to contribute to the financial aspect of the scorecard in a positive way. Increasing the financial allotment for marketing on the learning and growth portion of the scorecard will in turn bring in a larger consumer base and ultimately contribute right back to that financial aspect. It kind of lends to this whole circle of life. Selling Frontier adds money back to the books, as does slightly raising fares, but not to the extent of nearing competitor prices. Outsourcing cuts wait times and keeps things running smoothly, leading to customer and employee satisfaction. And finally, there is a base to start at and continually reevaluate to get People Express back on track. After considering these factors, I ran my simulation again with reduced staff, simulating reducing staff due to outsourcing, no additional airplanes, increased fare prices, still below competitors, and an increase in marketing for expansion of customer base leading to growth. I found that debt decreased, assets marginally lowered, but equity began to increase. Burr's ambition was essentially his downfall. His vision for his company was to one day compete with the big airlines and see his company right up there with them. He figured the best idea would be to acquire more, and more, and more. But too much of a good thing can be bad. His pride essentially got in the way. My plan would continue to grow PEX at a slower rate, but eventually decisions could be made to make it bigger and more profitable. Thank you.